Testing. Wabash County Carnegie Public Library Oral History Program, interviewing Frank Rettig at the Wabash Carnegie Public Library, and the date, January 17th, 1973. Frank, we're just going to lead into the questioning here, and why don't you give me a little background, first of all, on your parents?
On your parents?
Right.
Okay, well, my father, Frank J. Rettig, was born on January the 8th, 1863, and on North Cass Street, the old home place was there, and in November the 1st, 1888 then, he married Alice L. Lutz, who at that time lived just 1 mile south on State Road 13 and to the right, and it was the only farmhouse in that section of the country out there at that time. But after he was married there on November the 1st, 1888, he had already started a hardware store in North Manchester, Indiana, and after he was married, they immediately moved to North Manchester, and they had their house already furnished there at Wayne and 2nd Street in North Manchester, Indiana, where he, from then on, he worked at the hardware store. And in those days, North Manchester, from Wayne and 2nd Street, there wasn't a single house from 2nd Street on north to the 1 block south of the college, and there was only one building at the college in those days. But everything south of that, which is now the aristocratic part of North Manchester, Indiana, there wasn't a single house clear to the river. And when I was very small, we went to the only city school that there was in North Manchester at that time. We had electricity all right, but everything was outdoor toilets, both for the girls and the boys, and it created quite a sensation and sometimes at this outdoor facility. But in 1900 then, after we moved from North Manchester to Wabash, where Father started his hardware store on the south side in what we term now and what is in those days was known as the Big 3 building. And the Bradley Brothers drugstore with Charlie Bradley, the proprietor at that time, had the corner store, while we had the second building in which the hardware store was located. And at that time, the Southside post office was also located in the back of our hardware store. And then in the right-hand building, or the last building to the east, Father had his machine shop. And going back then to North Manchester, before we moved away from there, my father ran a feed mill in connection with the hardware store, and my brother Lutz and I used to haul corn cobs from the elevator out at the railroad elevator to furnish the fuel for the grinding mill. And in 1906 or 7, no, it wasn't that. It was before that. It was 1890 is when we came to when I was born, and when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I passed papers for F.J.Rettig in North Manchester at the big sum of 25 cents a week for passing papers. I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and passed the papers. And then in those days, the Edison came out with his phonograph with the earphone attachments. And Mr. Bechtel had bought one of those machines, and I think they had either 6 or 10 attachments for that machine, and he would rent it out of an evening to different parties. And I got 25 cents a night for going out and running this outfit for the parties. That was before we came to Wabash. But after we came to Wabash then, in 1900, I went to the Southside School in grades 6, 7, and 8. And there, of course, we met a lot of the old-timers. Brownie Lutz, who was eventually wound up the big man in the Big 4 distribution in northern Indiana, and several of the old-timers at that time. But getting back then to when my father was born here in Wabash, he spent a part of his time in the old Wabash Brewery. His father was born in 1863, as I had specified before, but in a few years after, he made beer just in his shed in the back of the room. But in 1865, then Frank A. Rettig and Philip Alber started the brewery out on North Cass Street. And it ran on, after they started this brewery, they donated a portion of the ground, which is now Falls Cemetery, gave it to the cemetery for burial purposes. And my father's brother, according to my grandmother Rettig, was the first one that was ever buried in Falls Cemetery. In the northern portion, or I don't mean the northern, the western portion of the cemetery, and I think where the Kaisers originally, or now, are buried, but when they buried Frank A. Rettig, it was in, oh gosh, I got to check here just a minute. I'm getting, when he was buried, he was only 2 years old, and my grandfather wanted to perpetuate the name of Frank A. So they changed my father's name, which originally was John, to Frank, and now it is always carried on through all the rest of his life at Frank A. But my grandmother said that they've had to build a rail fence around this grave to keep the cattle off it. It was just a pasture in that time. And then they ran that brewery up until 1897, when my grandfather died. And up until that time, all the bottles were known or had the prefix of Rettig and Alber on the front of the bottles. But in 1897, after my grandfather died, then it was known as the Wabash Brewing Company. And for bottle collectors, both of those are quite a collection.
Who bought the brewery?
Alber bought the brewery from my father, and then eventually it just closed up. It just went out of business. They closed the thing up after that time.
Do you remember the brewery?
I remember the brewery very well, because when we used to come down from North Manchester, they always had what they termed as a keg in the corner. They always had a keg of beer on tap with a little, very small glass that they give to the public there to get them started. And I still have, and they're still a collector's item, the prefixed glasses of Rettig and Alber on the little beer glasses that they had in the corner of the brewery. And then after they closed that up, then it was Carl Alber started just a distribution for pop in there, and he run that for just a short time. And those bottles are also a collector's items, but I don't happen to have that. My brother has one of them, and I've been trying to locate just a single bottle on there. Yeah. Not that they're any intrinsic value, but I just love to have it because it's
sentimental.
Sentimental.
Frank, let's, if recalling your memory before we go on the brewery, can you remember what it looked like inside the old Rettig and Alber Brewery?
Oh yes, I can remember very well. Before they had the bottling works, which is out where the sales building is there at the present time.
That would be on what street?
That's on Cass Street, North Cass.
North Cass.
North Cass, yes.
North
and the brewery, they do in those days after they had everything bottled or kegged, they put it back in the storage, back in the wall there, back in the hill, and they carried a temperature of about 45 to 47, and it didn't need any ice at all in those days, which saved an awful lot of money.
Did they have a lot of people working in the brewery?
Not too many people. They had a few people, but not too many. It didn't, no more than they sold at that time. It didn't take too many people to do it. Someplace here I've got, in the first year that they were there, they made 8,000 barrels of beer. And they went on then the following years up to a capacity of about 20,000 barrels a year. But from then on, of course, it just gradually dropped out.
Who would people come and get the beer, or would
they would not only would they come and get the beer, but they had a delivery service too. And I remember my father has often mentioned of Reverend Little, the Presbyterian minister here, was sick at one time, and the doctors recommended Dr. Wilson, which was very popular in Wabash in those days too. He recommended to Reverend Little that he get some beer and drink it. And he called out at the brewery and ordered a case of beer. And they asked him if they should come in at night and come in the back way. And he said, no, if it's medicine and I need it, come in the front way and any time you want to. And they did. They said they delivered it right in the front door.
Yeah, I'll be done. Dr. Little was known.
Oh, he was a Presbyterian minister that was, he was just known all over this whole section of the country in here. And when he died, memorial for a whole day, it was marvelous. It just, everything just quieted down. I tell you, it was really something.
Yeah.
And then when we moved to South Wabash in 1900, as I specified before, we went into the big three, and Father was ingenious with his machinery, and in 1903 and 4, with the aid of my dad and some other people he had working for him in the machine shop, my brother Lutz and I made an automobile. We took a buggy with a stationary engine and put it in to this buggy, and my father went to the blacksmith shop and had bands made and marked out the sprockets that we could put onto this outfit and run it with a bicycle chain. And we actually run this automobile for a very short distance, but I wish I could have it today. Boy, it would be really something. And then when I was in the Southside there, I started, of course, I was only a little over 10 years old and was in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in the Southside. But I started in business there. I was in the paper business, I was in the junk business, I was in the restaurant business, and every weekend I sold fish. And during the Depression, when everybody was really hard up and didn't have much to spend, I made as much money on my Friday and Saturday fish sales as practically all the fellows did in the factories.
Which Depression are you talking about?
That was about 13.
1913.
10 to 13 on
Right,
in there,
right.
yeah. And I got my fish from the Wolverine Fish Company in Detroit, and we would meet the train over here at about 4 o'clock in the morning and take it over and deliver them and clean them up. And I never lost a cent on it because I had a standing order from the Rock City restaurant that anything that I had over, they would take. And I never lost a cent on my fish business. And then in 1905, my father purchased on West Canal Street the building that was known or had been used as the electric light plant in Wabash. And we purchased that in about 1905, and we moved a hardware store over there, but he didn't sell much in hardware at that time as he specialized on his machine work. And we did an awful lot of machine work at that time, and for threshers and for boiler work and for the old light company's boiler outfit over on East Wabash there. We used to reflue that boiler about once or twice a year over there, and we maintained that outfit, took care of it for them most of the time. And when we moved into this West Canal Street building, the West building, we didn't have any use for it at all. And my brother Lutz and I made a small bowling alley in there of just 10 pins and croquet balls. But we had a ball in there till Father finally got a chance to rent that to the Wabash outfit just west of us that made wagons and sleds. And we used that then for a year or two as their warehouse for these Wabash wagons. And I saw one downtown here just the other day at the clothing store in the window, and that was made in and stored in our warehouse before they got it.
I'll be done.
Let's see here. In all of this time, Father had quite a few of the old-timers working for him. Harry Worth, who lived right next to us over on High Street. We lived right next to the river, but when we first came to Wabash, we lived in the upper story of the Big 3 building. Then we moved to the first house south of Wiesner Barber Shop, which was in use there when we moved to Wabash and run for a good many years afterwards. And then Father moved to 1076 North Middle Street, where us kids were all raised up. My brother Lutz and George and Sister Emma, who is in Fort Wayne now. And then we went to this building on West Canal Street where we were in business then until we sold out here just 17 years ago to the F.J.Rettig and Sons Incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
But in those days, we were the first people in the automobile business in Wabash, and when we were on the South Side yet, Monk Newman, who ran the Tremont Hotel at that time. We had his automobile in our garage more times, I think, than he had it even in his own. But those were the days, and with the Haynes Apperson and the Pope Toledo and the Orient Buckboard and the Stanley steamer. Dell Adams on the south side had a Stanley steamer, and boy, he was people really looked up to him. He was really something. But in those days, we went quite a ways out in the country to fix cars. Nowadays, everybody has to come in. But we had, at one time, we had 3 curved-dashed Olds, and they were single tires, single tube, no inner tubes in them at all. And for emergency, we always carried a coil of rope that we'd put on the wheel rather than we had a flat tire, rather than to bring them in just on the rim. Then, in those days, I'm not sure of the year, but the first streetcar came into Wabash from Boyd Park. And a fellow that worked for my dad, Ed Unger, brought the first streetcar from Rich Valley into Wabash. And they had to stop down, coming up that evening, they had to stop about where the gravel pit is at the present time. Something went wrong with the streetcar, and he stayed overnight with the folks there in the country. Mm-hmm. And in the morning he got out, he said, and cut the farmer's fence, and got some wire of some kind, and fixed the streetcar up and brought it on into Wabash. And I can remember then when they put the tracks down all around into South Wabash, the curves there where the old Southside school is, where the fire station now is, and then they come on down where the building is and turn right there. And in right south of the Southside school, when they put the tracks in, they brought in a lot of Italians. And they had an old restaurant building in there that they put the Italians in to stay while they were building the tracks. And all they used for bedding was just straw. They had straw in that place, and they did their cooking inside, and they got so it smelled pretty tough, boy. The people must have kick about it. So one night, I don't know who did it, we never did find out who did it, but somebody sewed a match in, boy, and took care of that. It burnt the outfit down, boy, and they had to move out, so that took care of that part of it. But now, it hasn't been too long ago that I run across a man in Huntington by the name of Floyd Bates. And we've been to his house a few times since then, and he has also been down to our place. And he run the city car line for a good many years from out at the hat factory out clear to the end of Pike Street on the south side. And he's a great guy to talk of, people that he used to carry and the antics that the kids used to cause him. But he said lots of times he would have better than 100 people on his little city car that would come down the hill there.
He lives in Huntington now?
He's in Huntington now, yes.
In town?
In town, yeah. I have his address to home, but I don't have it down here.
Is he an older gentleman?
Oh, yes, he's probably, I'd say, 75, right out there.
Yeah. And not to digress here, but what's your age today?
I'm 82. 82. I'll be 83 in June 22nd next year.
Okay, go ahead.
In 1913, of course, we were down on West Canal Street there with our building at that time. And that's when we had the big flood. And in our building, we had 37 inches of water on our floor at that time. And we worked all evening or all night until the morning it drove us out, and our lights all went off. But we had in those days, instead of having oil like we do today in cans to put in these cars, we'd buy it by the drum, and we had to put in a big drum. Well, we had, I expect, 8 or 10 of those along one of our walls, and to keep them from turning over, we put little fly wheels, as my father also made stationary engines at that time. We put these fly wheels on top of this outfit, but when the water come up to 37 inches, it was pressure enough, but it upset the doggone oil, and we had, our building was a mess, I'll tell you. We had oil all over the top of it. So when we went down and we went upstairs that night and slept with the rats and everything else because they all went upstairs, boy. But in the morning, when we opened up our back doors, windows, and the front door so we could get the water out of there, the oil went out of our building, And all down from West Canal Street, clear on down to Rich Valley, you could see oil against the houses there and give us the water line. And for a good many years, the water line was very visible, clear to Rich Valley down through there for 1913. And this Ed Unger that I mentioned, he was the fellow that built the cut through from the bridge on south on 15. He was a guy that had charge of all of that end of it. And in the old days, the road used to go down about halfway or about to the end of Deal's machine shop, and then start up the hill and right up the side of the hill and go out over the top of the hill that way. But Ed Unger, of course, made the 15 out through the cut, and he was the guy. And I tried to get my brother several times to get him to make a record, because he used to go out and spend a lot of time with my brother when he had his machine shop or his little shop out on the South 15. But we never did that. But he did at one time have Gus Wing, who at one time ran the electric light station, or not station, but the power company there for the city of Wabash. And in the museum down here, they have a recording that my brother made, flat disc, and he donated it to the museum down here of Gus Wing when he talked to him, and he is the fellow that ran the power plant at that time. And
let's check our tape.
Okay. And also, at that time, with Gus Wing, there was Tom McNamee, who at that time was very, very popular in Wabash, and he was a 33rd degree Mason, and he was connected with the Ford meter box too in the early days, and I'm not sure what happened, whether the Fords bought him out or just what happened, but anyhow, he severed his connections with the Ford meter box. But my recollection from 1907 on, every Monday I worked the town trade. That is called on them to sell merchandise. And Ford meter box was the first place that I ever called. And I can well remember Wilbur and John Ford's father, who at that time had his desk, or not desk, but his bench right at the top of the steps. And we always saved the world every Monday morning when we went up. He perfected what they termed as a gulper in those days, where there was just a single drop of water from a faucet would register, and they'd get all of it. In those days, a lot of them let the water run and it didn't register. But he perfected this gulper, and he wanted to smoke, and he generally smoked up there in the office. And as I understood it,
this was Mr. Ford?
Mr. Ford,
yeah,
Senior, the senior.
Right.
And as I understand it, and I think I am correct, that he wanted to smoke always up there, and he took out a special policy, insurance policy, so any of the boys that worked in the machines up there could smoke also. He was a wonderful gentleman, and I'm telling you, I whenever I see either one of the boys today, I think of their father, because there wasn't anything any better than him. He was wonderful. But I called on him, and then I went right across the street to Will Urschel at the cabinet company there. And Will Urschel was the toughest customer that I ever sold merchandise to. He would beat me down to the last eighth of a cent. But why, I never have known, and I've asked him several times. When we quit talking business, he took me under his wing and told me what to buy in stocks and bonds, and how to pay for them, and everything of that kind. And Uncle Bill, until 2 years before he left us, I never bought a thing or sold anything until I talked to Uncle Bill, and I took his word for everything.
Did you start buying as soon as he...
I started buying in 1907, and I have bought stocks and bonds ever since 1907, and my appreciation has been fantastic. That, of course, is what I'm living on today. But it's through Uncle Bill's information, and why he took me under his wing I never could understand. But I would have loved to have had his portfolio also when he passed on, because I think it would have been at least $1 million, but I'm not sure about that part. But we saved the world every Tuesday at Kiwanis. He sat clear to the north, and I sat right next to him. He had 29 years perfect attendance, and I had 28 at that time when he quit there. Now I have 32 perfect attendance. But that goes for that part of it. Then, in those days, of course, in 29 we had bank trouble. And with the bank trouble, Mr. Honeywell was the advocate of the new bank and worked very hard on it. And it was through him that, of course, they had the reorganization. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I was the second man that he ever asked to be a director on the new bank. But at that time, I was sued for $750,000 for being a director on the old Wabash County Loan and Trust Company. And I told Mr. Honeywell that he sure didn't want a fellow that already sued for $750,000 for mismanagement to be a director on the new bank. And he thanked me for the information. Of course, he should have known it anyhow. But for that reason, I've never taken it. But I've been very much interested in
How did you first meet Mr. Honeywell?
Well, Mr. Honeywell, in the early days, when he was where the bank is at the present time, he married the Lutz girl.
Right.
And the Lutz girl was some distant relatives of ours, you see, and that's where we started to know each other. We've known each other there, and we've known Uncle Rube, as we called him, Uncle Rube Lutz, which was the father of Mrs. Honeywell, his first wife, you see. And then there was Jess Owens, Don Rodebaugh, and Willard Huff, all worked for him, kids, just in school. But they washed cars, and they walked the dogs, and they just cooked and everything else for Mark. But Don Rodebaugh and Bill Huff could take it and stayed with him. But Jess Owen, he said, boy, it was too rough for him. He couldn't do all that crazy stuff. But they all took care of his automobile too. But of course, Will Huff and what do you call him, are wealthy because of the Honeywell stock that Mr. Honeywell gave them in those days.
Are they still living?
Oh yes, those two are still living.
Will
yeah.
Huff and...
Willard Huff is in California, and what do you call him, is in the east someplace. Rodebaugh is in the east someplace, yeah.
You talk about the first Honeywell plant, or where he had his plumbing supply, would be where
the first Honeywell supply was right across from the Masonic Temple today.
Right.
And he only had one man working for him, a Joe Owens, who was a club-footed man. And after he had the Honeywell Memorial down here, he let Mr. Owens, or gave him all saws and all that kind of stuff. He really kept him in groceries till he passed on.
When did you first calling on Honeywell's little shop
well,
there?
That would go back around about 1906 to 1910. And Mr. Honeywell was just like all the rest of us. I used to call on Mr. Honeywell, on D.A. Pike and George Deal of a Saturday to get enough money to make my payroll. And I'm telling you that we were all hard up in those days, mighty hard up. Yeah. And I can remember D.A. Pike, of course, the lumber mill had right east of the storage down there now, the old General Electric outfit. And in 1913, all of his lumber and logs and everything floated down Canal Street, clear on down, they gathered them clear down to Boyd Park. And we, after that, after 13, we never thought we had high water until we had at least 6 feet out in front of the building there. We never thought about high water because we could come in the back way. But D.A. Pike, of course, that more or less ruined him from that. And George Deal, of course, the war is what saved him. But I used to sell Mr. Deal quite a little stuff, and we were very, very good friends.
Tell me what, as you remember, what was Mr. Honeywell's business like on the side of the hill there?
He didn't have very much, just a small plumbing shop. And then he got into this heating business, you see, and he had Marshall Tillman, and there was someone else beside Marshall Tillman that was in business with him in this heating business when they used the just a pipe and a kidney, as they called it in those days. They called it a kidney. And then after they moved down on Canal Street and they went up with Minneapolis took over, I can remember the factory across, of course, in those days we had our sales agency for the Lambert automobile and the Jackson automobile and Reading Standard motorcycle right across the street from him. And in those days, they were selling Minneapolis Honeywell stock for $13 a share. And he went up and down the street trying to sell us guys some of that stock. Well, we'd look out the window from our place, and those guys were all sitting on nailed kegs of killing time, and I just couldn't see how in the world they could ever make any money. So I didn't buy any of it. But if I'd have bought 100 shares of Minneapolis Honeywell stock at $1,300, today it would be worth right close to $500,000 besides all the dividends that it's issued since.
Yeah.
So it's always your hindsight is better than your foresight.
Yeah. Was Mr. Honeywell that in the early days, did you sell him directly your supplies, or?
We sold him. Oh, you mean at the factory? Oh, yes, we sold a lot of them right direct in those days, and up at the plumbing shop, we sold him a little pipe at that time because it was plumbing in those days.
Was he fair to deal with and so forth?
Mr. Honeywell's a very, very peculiar man, but if he liked you, he liked you, and if he didn't, you might just as well drive on because he just wouldn't waste any time with you.
How did you get along with him?
I got along very, very fine. Mr. Honeywell, in fact, came down to our office on West Canal Street there occasionally and would talk to me, which was a little out of the ordinary.
Yeah. How did he dress in the early days?
Well, he dressed just like all the rest of us. Nothing phenomenal at all.
Yeah.
And he loved automobiles. And
did you ever buy a car off you?
No, he never bought a car off me. I don't really know what make he had. I don't really remember the cars there. But then, of course, the old hat factory, when Ford Meter Box took that over out there, that was the hat factory. We didn't sell anything to the hat factory in those days, but that was a marvelous thing. And Ford Meter, when I was in business, was wonderful for me. We worked with them, and they favored local people.
Yeah.
Local people. As long as your price was right, they favored. And I sold Ford Meter Box an awful lot of stuff. And it was through their purchasing that I got to a place that we got material from a Chicago nipple company and some of those people in Chicago that they told me at one time that they gave us in nipples. One time I sold a Ford Meter Box a half a carload of nipples in one time. And they told me that we got more nipples from them than Crane Company, which had distribution all over the country.
Yeah.
And in our early days, in the automobile days, when we first came over to the West Canal Street there and had the garage, we sold Firestone tires. And in those days, there was just 3 distributors for Firestone tires in Indiana. Mm-hmm. Dick Cahill in Fort Wayne, Van Camp Hardware and Iron Company in Indianapolis, and F.J.Rettig and Sons in Wabash. Mm-hmm. And for solid tires, we sold more solid tires than the other boys did because we, at those days, used the service motor truck companies' presses to press on truck tires, and we were fortunate enough to get the boys that run the press out there. They would work nights or Sundays for us, and they could bring their trucks in nights and Sundays and get their tires pressed on, while the other fellows had to wait some days through the week when they could get an appointment. And that brought us an awful lot of business. And I sold tons and tons of buggy rubber, too. In those days, we sold buggy rubber. And we've been through that whole thing. And I'm just trying to think. Of course, in the old service motor truck company now, that was an awful good customer of mine, too. And when the war was here, one time they bought 1 million hose clamps at one time. And in those days, they didn't have Zerk fittings like they do today on the cars. They had grease cups. And we just sold them thousands and thousands of grease cups because it took about 50 to 75 for every big truck for the government that went out. And it sure took a lot of them.
How about, getting back to Mr. Honeywell, if Mrs. Honeywell was a distant relative?
Yes, a distant relative. She was a Lutz.
Did you by any chance go to the wedding?
No, I didn't go to the wedding.
Do you remember when he lived on Main Street?
Oh, yes.
Did you ever see his house when he lived
there? Oh, yes. And then I went out on Wabash Street out there, too,
And you knew them both
I knew
socially?
Oh, not socially. I knew them, but then you wouldn't call it socially because we weren't hobnobbed with them at all. But I knew Mr. Honeywell a lot better than I did Mrs. Honeywell. Mm-hmm. But she was a very gracious lady, I know. And the present Mrs. Honeywell, they just don't make them any finer. She's just wonderful.
What would you say, Frank? You've been around and you look as a long perspective as a Wabash businessman. What would you say was Mr. Honeywell's success?
Well, I would say his success mostly was because he had visions of this heating business. When he started up on the side hill there with this kidney outfit. And of course, after he got hooked up then with Minneapolis, they combined the whole thing together, and that's what culminated the whole outfit.
Yeah.
But he had visions, and he was a man that done a lot of thinking. He was very sincere, and he was close. That is, I mean, what I mean by close, he didn't have too many friends or people on the outside, but what he did was the upper crust.
Yeah.
And he did some marvelous things, of course, through life after he got started, and it was coming easy. But he was a peculiar gentleman. If he liked you, he liked you, and if he didn't, boy, he didn't. And it's the same way with when he was in the bank. He organized the bank out down there, you know, and got things started, and it was wonderful. We went through that situation, and I wouldn't want to go through that again. But there was when they were going to have a split down there in the old days of the bank, they were going to have a 2-for-1 split in the stock, and the fellow, I can't even think of his name. He's dead now. Was the manager of the bank there, but he was trying to buy up this stock for a very, very low price from the widows and everybody, because they needed money bad. And Mr. Honeywell found out that he was trying to buy that up, and instead of this, he was going to, as I understood it, sell the extra half that he was supposed to get out of his stock. But when he found out that this other fellow was buying up for a little nothing and was going to take the women and the different people that had stock, he just shut up and kept all of his stock. He wouldn't move any of it.
As a businessman, also...
He was sincere and a good one.
Looking, you employed people at the F.J.Rettig Company, and what do you think Mr. Honeywell's relationship with the employees were? You knew of many of the men that worked for him.
Well, of course, he didn't pay too much, but the people loved him. The people that stayed with him loved him and would do anything for him.
What do you think the community thought of Mr. Honeywell?
Well, from a business standpoint, they liked Mr. Honeywell because he had employment. And the general public, of course, wasn't connected with Mr. Honeywell too much. But those that were thought he was tops. We've been very fortunate in Wabash, in my estimation, having people of that caliber. You take George Deal. Now, George Deal was a marvelous. And Ford. Listen, they don't make them any finer than the Fords. And D.A. Pike. I'm telling you that... and another one that I haven't mentioned here was George Barkers, that used to run a machine shop right across from the cabinet company there with Mr. Urschel. And he run a machine shop, and he did an awful lot of automobile repairing in those days, too. And he manufactured the Getz spark plug. Getz, G-E-T-Z. And in northern Indiana and all this section of the country, they sold an awful lot of them. That would be like Champion and AC spark plugs, you know. He really sold them. And in those days, we were one of his outlets. And we sold Getz spark plugs all over the country. But one morning, we woke up. In my lifetime, we've had 3 companies that have, in my estimation, did us wrong. Getz was one of them, because we had sold an awful lot of Getz plugs in all this country and got them established. And they decided to go into business themselves with a truck, and they just shut us off. We were off one night. Another one we had there was Firestone Tires. Firestone Tires, boy, after all of our distribution that we had stocks it'd take a week to go into all this stuff of stocks of tires. We had a consigned stock in Huntington. We had one in Manchester in those days. We really sold Firestone Tires. But they just shut us off because they were going to dealers instead of, we only was 3 in the state, you know. And another one was a Duco company, paint. We introduced their chem line of automobile paint when they first come out with it. And we had it all in this northern Indiana here. And we woke up one morning and they just shut us off on that. And those are the 3 companies in my lifetime that, in my estimation, have done me wrong.
Whatever happened to Gates spark plugs?
It just folded up. It run for a little while, and I presume Mr. Marcus had financial trouble, and it just went out of business.
How did you?
I still got just one plug in my antiques.
How did you weather the first depression in 1913?
It was rough. It was rough.
How did you do it?
Well, we had a little money that was froze in the bank, and we could get $10 a day is all. But
This was in 1913?
1913, yes.
Yeah.
And then in 29 was rough too. 29 was really rough.
What happened in 1929?
Well, 29, of course, when they shut the bank up, we just woke up one morning, it was all shut, regardless of what you had in there. And after they went through the ringer, readjusting and relining up there, we could draw out $10 a day on the money we had in there.
Mm-hmm.
And to get the thing established, we had to take stock in the bank. I don't remember the proportion or anything, but I know that I got some stock at that time from the bank, and that's where I've started. I've never sold any of it. It was just
You were telling me that you started buying stocks on the advice of Mr. Urschel in 1907.
1907.
Did 1929 wipe you out?
No, because I'd bought good stuff, and whenever I'm different than most fellows. When I buy a stock, I just put it back and forget it.
Yeah.
That is, forget it as far as I can forget it. I don't sell it. I'm not one of these fellows that buys this week and sells next week, thinks I can make a buck. I just buy it because I think it's fine, and I just set it back.
Do you still
In all my life, I've never sold stock but 3 times in my whole life.
Do you still have the original stock that you bought in 1907?
1907, yes, sir.
What was your first buy?
My first buy was Standard Oil of Indiana at 13,
What is it today?
about 90-some, and besides the cuts, the splits that they've had. Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, yes.
I think
My portfolio works in that proportion. That is, I've been very, very fortunate with Mr. Urschel's advice. I lay it or give it all the credit to him.
But you wouldn't buy any Honeywell stock because...
I didn't, because I couldn't see that $13. In those days, I was making $10 a week, and when I was married, I made $10 a week, and I paid $6 a month rent, and we didn't even have electric lights in my little house. We in an outdoor toilet, boy, we come up the hard way. And as we come along, I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
I would love to have bought it, because now, of course, it's just hindsight.
Yeah, oh,
But it's marvelous. I enjoy it. I enjoy that, and I don't think there's any difference in buying stocks and bonds than there is in buying merchandise and putting it on your shelf. You buy it with the expectation of it making some money.
right.
And if it don't, you get some dead ones. Of course you do. Just like the merchandise, you do the same thing.
Did you ever get hooked on some stocks?
Yes, sir, I have.
On
Yes,
what?
sir.
What kind?
I bought some Chilean stock one time of a director of the old bank up here before they went bluey. And I think he knew it was sour because he sold it to me. I was just a kid, and he sold it to me. Mr. Haas sold it to me. 50 shares of Chilean, 50 bonds of it. And I lost on that one. But I didn't lose too much money because I took my loss and sold it out and let Federal help me out on it.
You know, something funny in this conversation that you and I are having, we've never talked about women. How about your mother? What was her maiden name?
She was a Lutz.
Lutz.
She was a Lutz.
Yeah.
My mother was a gracious lady, and boy, a hard worker. And my mother was just a hard working in her line. She was a farmer.
Uh-huh.
And in the early days when they had the racetrack at North Manchester, she raced up there on a horse,
Uh-huh.
bareback. Not bareback, but with a saddle. And she had several. My sister has got some silver pictures and things that she won up there. And she was a great gal on the farm. We always had a farm, but she run all the farm. And she'd trade horses right on the road. And she'd come home with a horse on the buggy, or a cow, or a sheep up in the buggy. She was a farmer, and she always made money. Boy, she knew.
How did she meet your father?
I can't tell you that. I don't know any of the circumstances on that. I don't really know.
You had 3 sons, you being one, and 1 daughter.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when did your mother die, Frank? What age was she?
You better shut that off, man. I'll try and get. Mrs. Alice Rettig, my mother, died in January 25th, 1952.
Yeah. How old would she have been, Frank? Born what year?
Well, she was born May the 6th, 1864. 64?
So she was long-lived. And
Yeah, she's long life. Our family has all been long life. Grandmother Rettig was 94, grandmother Lutz was 93, and father and my mother both were 87 when they passed on. So it's a long life family.
How about, Frank, how about ask you another question here?
Go right ahead. Now, you've got some questions here that I've got mostly in this family stuff. Now, you ask
Right.
about Wabash, and I'll see if I can help you.
Tell me about Ku Klux Klan.
Well, of course, I remember when Ku Klux Klan, and I belonged to it, and went to 4 or 5 meetings around here, and then I got disgusted with the thing and quit the outfit. But, of course, Biggerstaff were the big boys here. George Biggerstaff, who's a very good friend of mine, incidentally, and he and I were very close in the Fidels. When I joined the Fidels, they were up over the old Bradley building on Canal Street and owed everybody in town, and they just couldn't buy a box of matches without having the money. But when I went in, and we moved over the old Citizens Bank on the corner, and I was president, and I told them at that time that they had to cut out this monkey business. We were going to get all paid up, and in 2 years we did get paid up. I saw to it that we were paid up, got all that, and got some credit back again.
Then who induced you to become a member of the Ku Klux Klan?
Well, I presume, I couldn't say real sure, but I have an idea it was George Biggerstaff at that time. His brother Andy, too. Those two made a mint of money out of the Ku Klux Klan.
Did you buy a uniform?
No, I never
Never
had
bought a
any.
uniform?
No. I got disgusted with the outfit pretty shortly.
Do you remember any of the outdoor meetings they held?
I was at some of them, but I can't tell you where they were anymore. I don't remember that. Sure, I don't remember that.
Who was,
it wasn't exciting enough or something. I don't know why, but I just didn't like it. Because I had a lot of friends, Jew friends, and friends that was on the other side, and I just couldn't see it. They couldn't convince me that they were roughnecks at all.
Do you think that what do you think the reason was that this went at that time?
Oh, I think it was a little bit of dissension like we have today. They wanted to go someplace and do something, and they didn't know what they wanted to do. I think we're just about like the same way today. There's a lot of these things that we can't quite understand or know what's going on, and it's going to take time to work it out. I can remember at our fire station, we had the horses here, just the team of horses, and they had one man that stayed at the fire station all the time, and there was two that could be close there and could be called in very close, and we had a volunteer fire department. I used to go to putting out all the fires. I don't know, there was something exciting about it, and I went with my motorcycle. I love to go to fires. Yes, sir.
How about the early days here? What did the downtown area look like? Tell me about the streets and the stores and so forth.
Well, of course, when we went on West Canal Street, it was just mud. And Dan Showalter paved Canal Street with brick. After we moved down on West Canal Street, we used to, with the automobiles, be clear up to the axles in the mud there in the spring. It was terrible. And, of course, Wabash Street, it's all rebuilt in there. Practically the whole thing is rebuilt, so you can't compare it to anything. And over on Miami and Cass, no, not in Miami and Cass, Miami and Market, used to be a rice photographer right in the corner in there where the hotel is. And there was a shoe shop then. I don't remember who run that, right next to that, a little one. And then Charlie Lucky had the garage right next to that. And we had the garage right across, we owned the building then right across the street there. It was a, L.A. Dawes had a livery barn in there at that time. And then it turned into a garage, and then the father bought that in those days. And then afterwards, we bought the small building where the office supply company is. We bought that in a few years afterwards. We bought that of. Just can't think now who we bought that off of, but somebody wanted to move it there, and because we put the two together. And when Scots were in there, we just broke the wall between the two and run it. Now there's a single wall between both places.
What the You remember, was Herder's Opera House here when you were a kid?
Harder's?
Harder's.
Oh, yes, sir.
What was
Two
that?
bits, we used to go up in nigger heaven there all the time. Boy, that was really something.
Well, tell me about Herder's
Well, that's
Opera
where
House.
Penny's is now.
Yes.
That's where Penny's is. Oh, that was really something in those days. Yes, sir. All the kids, for 25 cents, we went upstairs, and boy, there would be a big line out in front when they'd open the doors.
What type of entertainment? Do you remember any of the entertainment?
Oh, they have like these outdoor outfits they have in Warsaw now, something very similar. They had nice plays, and they'd come in there with a different play every week, be a week stand, And, it was quite a thing. And for downstairs, you could get a reserved seat for a buck and a half. Boy, you could really be somebody.
I know a man that has a couple chairs from the old Harder's.
Is that right? Well, Garl Baber's father had the Rambler agency then down in the first floor back in after the Opera House had closed up. But Mr. Baber had his garage in there and sold the Rambler automobile. And I can remember the first thing that I can remember of Mr. Baber there is that great big 2-cylinder Rambler. Oh boy, it was, those motors, both of them opposite, were about 6 feet long. Oh boy, they were big, but he had the agency in there at that time. And Charlie Lucky then sold the Hupp automobile over on the other street.
How about...
and Whip Slimmer was his main salesman in those days.
How about Cal Spurlock? Did he have an agency back in those days?
Yes, he was up on the hill, up on the top of the hill there, across right from the courthouse. Yes, sir.
I don't know what he had, Oldsmobile or...
I don't really know what he was selling at that time. And...
were the automobiles pretty dependable back in those days, Frank?
Oh, they were in the garage an awful lot. And when we sold a tire, they were guaranteed for 3,500 miles. And if we had a tire that we sold that went 3,500 miles, we put it in the window with the guy's name on it, because the more of them went out at 500 than they did at 3,500. And one time we had the agency for the Diamond automobile, and that's when they changed the black tread to the red tread. And we would sell two and get 3 of them back. Oh boy, they were rotten, I tell you.
Where were they made?
In Akron.
In Akron.
But when we sold a Firestone, and they had to, then in later days, they went to Indianapolis. Their main distribution was in Indianapolis then. And they had a gentleman down there that took care of the replacements when we didn't have the mileage on them. We'd take them to Indianapolis. And I don't know what there was about it, but he could look at a tire and tell you just how many miles it's gone. You didn't fool him at all. And if you were truthful, you got a fair replacement. And if you lied to him, boy, he put it to you.
Tell me about some of the doctors when you were kids around there.
Well, of course, there's Doc Wilson. Everybody loved Doc Wilson. He was our mayor for a good many years, and he just run more or less his own ticket, and everybody thought he was wonderful. And rid of you.
Yeah.
He did.
How about Doc Payne, the dentist?
Doc Payne was all right. Yeah. Doc Payne loved to he played cards, and when he got playing cards, boy, there was no appointments, but in the morning, he had his appointment. Doc Payne was good. Yeah, there was no argument about that.
Did Canfield come here as a young man?
Yeah, Canfield was on the corner. Canfield was a wonderful doctor. Yeah, he had the business, really.
Yeah. Did he come here as a young man out of school?
I can't tell you that.
Yeah.
When I knew Doc Canfield, he was fair age, and I couldn't tell you that. I don't really know.
How about old Doc LaSalle?
Old Dr. Sully didn't make him any finer. Oh boy, he was good. He was my doctor in the old days. Yeah. Yes. And I was operated on down in the Women's Club on West Hill Street.
Right.
It must have been about 3 or 4 for appendicitis. Doc Kern, Dr. Kern, who had his office up on Maple Street in those days. But those were the days.
Dr. Whistler came here as
yes, Dr. Whistler. Of course, he was
man.
with Wilson, you see. He was help with Wilson, yeah.
That was his nephew.
Yeah, and he came in there, and of course, Doc had the business, and when Wilson took over, well, he just took over, Whistler took over, well, he just took over Doc's business. But Doc was a wonderful doctor, too. A good doctor.
Was he?
Yes, he was a good doctor.
How about the newspapers, Frank?
Well, in the old days, there was the Times Star over on Canal Street here, you see, and boy, that was an uprising. And then when Nixon bought that out, there was an awful rivalry between those guys, boy, and it was hostile, I tell you. When Nixon come in here, he was against churches, he was against the schools, He was against everything. Boy, our town was in an awful shape. Awful shape.
Did you know him?
Well, yes, I knew him. Yes, and in fact, he also came to our office once in a while and would talk to me down there.
Yeah.
Yes, I never had anything. I always liked Nixon, but I know Homer Hoover and some of the fellows that were on the school board. Boy, Mr. Urschel, boy, he attacked them and through the paper, and it was our city was in a devil of a fix. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But
Why was he mad?
I don't know. He just took an arbitrary stand. I guess it sold papers. Everybody wanted the paper to see what was going on. But there were some days, I tell you. I was just trying to think. The Time Star in the old days, he was a tough guy too. He had his own ideas, and I can't think what his name is right now.
Why don't we conclude this tape, and I'll just turn this over, and we'll continue.
Okay.
You getting tired, Frank?
No. You get to be above 80, boy, and these names don't come to you like they used to. Don't to me anymore.
I don't know about that.
I do. Boy, I miss them.
Frank, did you graduate from high school?
Yes, I graduated in 1907 out of high school here.
Wabash?
Wabash High School.
Yeah.
And when I was in high school, I was the shortest guy in school. In fact, in a room downstairs, they made me a little box to put under so I could have my feet would hit the floor.
Mm-hmm. Where was the high school then?
Where the junior high, or not junior high, but down on Hill Street.
Corner of Hill and Cass.
Cass, Hill and Cass,
right.
yes. Uh-huh.
Who was the principal?
Mr. Naw, K.W. Naw.
Mm-hmm.
And Estella Moore was the assistant.
Yeah. Who were some of your teachers?
Oh, gosh. I'd have to go back and look there. I've got all of my old annuals and all that stuff back there from 1907 on, boy, and sometimes we go down to get some of the old timers back in our basement, and boy, we have an evening of really
Who are some of your classmates that are still around?
Well, a good many of them are gone, I'll tell you. There's Molly Logan, and Vern Jenkins died here just recently. I lost 6 of my classmates within a year here, just about a year ago.
I'll be darned.
6 of them within a year.
You and Molly Logan are about the only two left here in town?
Molly Logan, and wait a minute, no, there's more than that. I can't...
Any of the girls?
Yes. There's a... Wait a minute, Sarah, just a minute. George Ridgway and Lauren Talbot, and of course they both died about a year ago, and Vern Jenkins died about a year, it had been a year ago. And Red Milner's sister was a classmate of mine. She passed on here about a year ago. Red Milner was the old football player in the old days, you know, and down on South Carroll Street, boy, listen, those were the days for football. Mm-hmm. And they really had the crowd too. People come from miles and miles and miles to see that.
Tell me about you being on the school board. How did you, first of all,
I was on the school board for 18 years.
How did you get on the school board in those days?
Well, it was appointed by the council.
Same as it is
Same
today?
as it is today, yeah,
Right.
Same as it is today.
Did they approach you, someone approach you?
Yeah, they approached me because I don't remember whose place I took at that time, but we had Asher Gray, in the early days, and he knew labor and all of that end of it. We had Doc Foltz, who knew them from a teacher's angle, and I was on from a mechanical setup for maintenance of the buildings. And in those days, we only had 3 on the school board, and I think today that if they only had 3, they would do a lot better job than they're doing today. Mm-hmm. Because we had 3, and we had lots of arguments, but we never left a meeting, but things were okay.
Who was your superintendent on the day? Who was the school superintendent when you were on the board?
Oh, wait.
Darnell?
No, died, darn it. Oh. Can't tell you, can't get. That's another one of those places where when you get 80, boy, you don't think.
Yeah.
But Leewell Carpenter was followed him,
yeah.
And Leewell was on there for quite a while. And with Leewell and us 4, We took care, in the summertime, we took care of all the maintenance of all these buildings. And it was quite a job.
You didn't do the physical work?
No, not the physical work, but we maintained, as we saw that was taken care of.
Yeah.
And Leeville Carpenter then, if we would decide we had to have a roof or a gutter or something of that kind, why, we would do it. And if we had to advertise for the bids, why, we advertised for, in those days everything was coal, you see, with coal.
Yeah.
And
what was the school budget roughly in those days? Less than $1 million?
oh yes, yes.
Less than $500,000?
About $500,000 in those days.
Half a
yeah,
million.
$500,000 in those days.
What was your relations with what were the relations with the teachers?
We had very fine relations.
No union?
No, no union at all. No
teachers
union
or
at all. No. Our relations with the teachers were very fine. I was on 18 years, and I think in those 18 years there was at least 15 that they got a raise. We were waited on every year for a raise. But tax was a situation in those days about the same as it is today. It's taxes.
Did the people feel in those days that they were up the limit on school tax?
No, they didn't argue too much because our rate in those days was only in the neighborhood of about $5 for the whole thing, and it didn't cost too much. Of course, we didn't make proportionally to what we are today either.
Yeah. What years did you go on, Frank?
I can't give you that without.
20s? Was in the 20s?
It was in the 20s, yeah.
And on through the 30s?
I've been off for about 15, 20 years, and I was on for 18 years, so you can figure it out.
Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed every minute of it, but I wouldn't want any more of it now. My wife didn't enjoy it because we had calls, lots of midnight, 2 or 3 o'clock. Some kid had got reprimanded for something, and they was sore at the teacher and call up and raise the devil because they wanted us to can the teacher or do something. And my wife she was thrilled to death. In fact, she said if I didn't get off of it, she was going to get off.
After 18 years, I think you had enough.
I had it. Well, I knew a year before, and I told them the year before I quit that was my last year, and they changed, which was very fine. But
did they go from a 3-man to a 5-man board?
Went from 3 to 5, yeah. And I think today it would be a lot better if we had a 3-man board. I really do.
Yeah.
We would save money, and you could pick somebody that knew what they were doing. I think today the boys, they just put them on there because they're nice guys, and that's wonderful. It's wonderful to be on because you're a nice guy. But somebody's got to get in on this whole thing, in my estimation. We've gone overboard with our administration, with police, firemen, school teachers. We've got to cut this thing down to reality, in my estimation. And this is stuff that they're talking to today for property tax relief. I think they're goofy because they're just going to take it out of one pocket and put it in the other. We'll have a sales tax or a gross income tax or something that's going to eat it up, and we'll take it off of property and put it right back in. It's going to cost you as much. The only thing we will have, some of them may have a little relief because these fellows from Tennessee and Kentucky and down into there will pay a sales tax that we're not getting much off of them today, and our average is 3.5 children to the family that we've got on the school in our schools.
Yeah.
And us guys that are paying most of it, our kids are all out and they've got their families. Of course, they maybe have got that 3.5 kids in there of their own too. So we're just helping pay for our grandkids.
Did you ever think a school building should have been named for Mr. Honeywell?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think he ever wanted it that way. I don't really think he did.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't a fellow to want to be in the limelight a lot. He wanted to work, and he did a marvelous lot of things, just like the Ford family, that the public don't know anything about.
What do you think about naming school buildings for live persons in the community?
Oh, if they're outstanding like Cecil Mills was, I think it would be all right. Cecil Mills was one of the grandest fellows that we've ever had in Wabash, in my estimation. And it was through Cecil Mills, I think, that Mr. Honeywell has a Honeywell Memorial, because he really loved Cecil Mills. But they didn't make them any finer. They just didn't make them any better.
What year did you get married, Frank? We are jumping around now.
My God, you are jumping around there. I have to look it up. I can't tell you offhand. Better shut that off a minute. You see, I've been remarried too, you see.
Yes, I was going to ask you
Yeah.
about that.
Yes. I've got it all there.
You've got a rather extensive genealogy there.
Oh, I've got a lot of it. And I've got a lot of stuff in here that, of course, would be history as far as that's concerned. Yes, okay, you got on?
Okay, yeah.
It's on that. I was married Nellie Owens on April the 5th, 1912, and she died October the 17th in 1940. And to that union, I had two daughters. One is now Mildred Bowlby, who lives in Indianapolis, and the other is Billy Preston, which lives in Talent, Oregon. And then in April the 5th, 1947, and I remarried Ethel Garner. And of course, she's still living. And she has two children, Bill Rife, who is at Indianapolis, and Miss Thompson, who lives here in Wabash.
Yeah. Well, that's real interesting. Frank, did you always affiliate with a church here in town?
I'm not what you call a good church member at all. I belong and contribute liberally to the Methodist Church, but and the missus belongs to the Friends Church, and we contribute to both. But I'm a very poor. I haven't been to the Methodist Church for 2 years now. It isn't that I don't want to go. I'd love to go. I'd love to go every week. But in my situation at the present time, I think you understand it, I can't do it. I have to stick pretty close to home, and I'm home about 95% of the time. The only thing that I go out much for, I go to Kiwanis because I have 32 years of perfect attendance, and I do attend Kiwanis. I love it. And I go down there from 11:30 till about 1:30, but other than that,
You stick close to
I
home?
stick awful close to home. And if I go to the grocery or the post office, generally I've got the missus with me because I keep pretty close range.
Did your parents great church attenders or average?
No,
or
they've never been church attenders.
They weren't church
Never
attenders?
church attenders. None of them on either side have never been church attenders. They've contributed liberally. I think I contribute very liberally, but and I really would like to go. I would go if so I could.
What would you say in your lifetime is would have the greatest impact on you? In other words, was it the first automobile, telephone? Albie Watson said it was the telephone for him.
Well, I don't really know. My greatest impression in all my life is my affiliation with my parents. I had the finest parents in the world, in my estimation.
Yeah.
My dad, with all of us kids, anything that we had in mind that was reasonable and okay, he would loan us money for it. But he expected every cent of it back, and we always gave it back.
Yeah.
And my mother, they just didn't make them any finer.
Yeah. Did your father accumulate what you would say wealth?
Oh, no. He was just a hard worker.
Yeah.
He was a hard worker.
But he never really accumulated a lot
No,
of money?
never accumulated wealth, no.
Yeah.
No, he never. My father, in Wabash here, when he was born here, he went to the Catholic school, he went to the Jew school, and he went to the Protestant school, all of them. His father, in those days, when he ran the brewery, they kind of patronized all the way around. And in the old days, my grandfather put one of the big church windows in the Catholic church. I don't know where, I would love to see it because his name was in the bottom of that. I've seen it in the bottom of that window, and I don't know whether it's still in the church. I don't suppose it is.
Was he Catholic?
My grandmother was Catholic, but of course he come from Alsace-Lorraine, and it was a Catholic background. You see,
Right.
they never played religion either. They were never religious, you might say.
Yeah.
But
That would be your grandmother, Rettig.
yes, grandmother Rettig, yes. And my mother then was in the Friends Church. You see, that's where she attended in those old days, back down where the cemetery is now. We had the Friends Church down there. That's before they tore the church down.
And they all lived to be a ripe old age.
Oh yes. She had, her brother was Dan Lutz and Will Lutz and Ike Lutz and Molly Eikenberry. That was her family, you see. They were all pretty good citizens of Wabash.
Now, your brothers and sister that are living, where are they?
I've got George here locally, and my sister Emily, is in Fort Wayne.
And she's younger than both of you?
Well, my brother Lutz was 22 years younger than I, and of course he was killed in California with this airplane accident a good many years ago with this Raymond Brooks at North Manchester. They left San Francisco and started down, and the fog come in, and he was following the telephone wires trying to get into Los Angeles, and the telephone line come right up against the mountain, and instead of going up, well, they just run into the mountain and killed both of them.
It went through the mountain then?
It went,
Yeah.
yeah. But
he was 22 younger, 22?
he's 22 months younger than I.
22 months.
And then
yeah.
George is the youngest one, and then sister is in there. She's about, sister is about 70, she's close to 75.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're getting up in the ladder.
What year was this brother killed in the airplane crash? In the 20s or 30s? Or 40s?
Well, it's about in the 30s. He's been gone about 20 years. Yeah. We love to go to California, and I've been there at least 40 times since we started in 1907 to going out there. And we try to go out about every couple of years. I don't want to go out this winter because conditions at home, well, we just can't get loose. But I'd love to go. And I got a nephew out there that knows Los Angeles. He's been there practically all his life, and boy, he knows where to go and how to do it, and we just take off on, we have a marvelous time.
How about your health, Frank? Are you in good health?
I'm in pretty good health. I would say I'm in good health. I need to go to the hospital for a little operation, but then other than that, I'm fine health, I think, for an old guy.
Yeah. You never had any problem with weight?
No, never. Eat anything I want, and I know I talk to Frank Stevens every Tuesday at Kiwanis, and he said, you don't see how the dickens I do it, but I do. They try to
Take a little
diet and all that kind of stuff, but I don't pay any attention. I just eat what I want and go to it.
You've never had any trouble going up or down? Or?
Never had a bit of trouble.
Yeah.
No.
Take a little nip now and then?
Very seldom, very seldom.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing. My dad was raised in a brewery, and he didn't. We've always got it around the house because our friends come in. Well, we've always got it, but I had, well, I'll take it back. I had a glass of beer the other night. My granddaughter was married out here, and I had a glass of beer the other night. First I've had for 2 years, I think.
Well, I'll be there.
So we're not nippers at all, although Dad was raised in a brewery.
Yeah. How about your collections and so forth?
Well, we played our hobbies awful hard since I've retired for the last 17 years. And the missus and I have always seen alike until the last couple of years. For 24 years, I had the finest life that anybody could ask for. And my first wife, they just didn't make them. The good Lord's been awful good to me. I've got no kick, in a sense. But of course, in our hobbies, she saves coins, and I've saved stamps for 65 years and have a marvelous collection of stamps. And then I love dishes, and I've got a few bottles. I'm not a bottle collector. My nephew's a bottle collector. He really knows bottles, how they're made, when they were made, and where, and everything about it. But I've got this Rettig and Alber stuff and local stuff I love, but other than that, I'm not a bottle collector. But I do love dishes. I sure like that. And we're both rock hounds. We love to gather rocks when we go to California, out on the desert and places, and up into Canada and around there. And until 2 years ago, the missus made jewelry and such as that. But now, in the last 2 years, she just hasn't been able to concentrate. Physically, she's pretty good shape, but she just can't remember.
Who are your friends, male friends, that you see frequently or talk to here in town now?
Oh, Frank Stevens and Doc Stephan, and we don't have too many that we contact all the time. But Doc Foltz, until he passed on, Doc Foltz and I were together an awful lot. And
see Homer Showalter?
Homer Showalter, yeah. The old timers, Albie Watson and
Albie, yeah.
Yeah. You got to get to the old timers to really get together.
What were your politics most of your life, Frank?
Well, my folks were Democrats. My mother was a staunch Democrat, and all the Lutzes were Democrats. But I'm in the middle of the fence. I vote for the man. I'm not strong for Republican or Democrat, either one. I try to, in my estimation, to vote for a man that I think will represent me and do a good job. an independent.
What did you think of Franklin D. Roosevelt when he came on the scene?
I didn't like it. I didn't like it. He did a lot of things that were, I think he has started a lot of this something for nothing business that we've got today. But maybe that's what it took to get us out. I'm not trying to say whether it was or not. But I know that's where it started. And it's something for nothing, in my estimation, is what got our country in bad shape today. I think if we can get these people where they will give something for the money that they get, an honest day's work for an honest salary, I don't think we'll have any trouble. But this union business is out of hand, and this something for nothing. Of course, it's political. I think the whole thing is political. You vote for me, and I'll try and give you something extra, and that's what's wrong with our country.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is amazing. Yeah. And it's especially hard for us old-timers. Now, for the younger kids, now my kids, they don't see it like I do at all. They think that, don't make any difference what happens tomorrow, something will take care of them. But I don't figure it that way. If I go broke, boy, I'm broke, and I'd have a dickens of a time to get something to eat. And that's the way I was brought up. But the kids today don't feel that way. Don't you think that's the way it is?
Seems, it appears that
That's
way.
what I mean. Yeah. It appears that way. Yeah.
It's fantastic, isn't
it? It's something, and I really think we're going to see a change some of these days. It's got to come. It just can't continue like it is. It's got to come. Wow. And when it does, our 13 and 29 is going to be just fool's play, because it's going to be tough. Yeah. Because these people that are had this something for nothing for years are not going to back up. We'll have vandalism and robbery and theft and everything else, in my estimation.
In 1929, during the Depression of the 30s,
yeah.
Were there any times that you didn't think you were going to make it?
No, I didn't. We worked hard. And I put in, we never put in 10 hours a day. We put in 15 hours a day. And we worked every Sunday morning up until noon, always, in those days.
What would you
But
do?
I never worried that I wasn't going to have enough to eat. We eat a lot of cornbread, and we had a lot of mush, and things like that. And my mother was a farmer, and she raised her tomatoes and her potatoes and all that kind of stuff, corn. We weren't in bad shape at all. But it took work to get it.
What did you do on Sunday mornings when you were open?
Well, generally garage, because in those days they would be down to fix their tires or spark plugs or something crazy thing. Back in those Model T days, we carried an awful lot of stock. We'd put on carburetors. In those days, we put in every car that come in for an overhaul would be a carburetor, because the manure on the roads in those days, when it would dry, and blow up, and the ammonia was in that, get into these cork floats, and gosh, we just $2.50, that was all the carburetor cost in those days, $2.50. And a spark plug, 25 cents. Why, boy, those were the days. And that's what Sunday business generally was, because they'd work through the week and they'd need something and they'd come down over Sunday morning. We worked, always it was there on Sunday morning. Then finally we quit the Sunday business, and then finally we shut off the Saturday noon, and now talked to Don here the other day, and he says they don't even open up on Saturday.
Do you remember when do you remember listening to the first radio, Frank?
Oh, yes. At Water Kent outfit, and we would stay up until midnight when this guy played the piano out in a prison someplace out west, and we would stay up till midnight to hear him on. Yes, it's at Water Kent, these long outfits, I don't know, tubes or something. And the first tubes we got, we paid $5 a tube, and we sent to Chicago and got them, and they didn't guarantee them for 15 minutes, and that's about all they lasted, too.
Did that hurt you, Frank?
Oh, boy. We didn't buy too many of them because we didn't have the cash in those days, but we've had all the luxuries, you might say, at Water Kent and all that stuff, and we had the first early in the television and stuff. We were always, of course, we worked hard for it.
Yeah. Do you remember seeing the first telephone or using the telephone when you were a little boy? Or?
The first telephone I ever remember is at North Manchester. My father had a separate line from his house to the store, And it was, I never saw one of them since. I thought maybe the museum up here would have one, but they don't. But to ring it, all you had to do is hit it, and the vibration traveled through the wire. We were about 2 blocks away from the store, and it would ring the bell up on top of that thing, and they'd talk. In the old days. That's my first telephone.
You remember the first car?
Well,
seeing the first car, or riding in the
first
first
the first car to see was a white steamer by Dell Adams over on the south side, and an electric, the Monk Newman that the Tremont Hotel owned, and there was a lady up on, I can't think who it was, up on Hill Street that had an electric too at the same time that Monk Newman had his. But Monks we had over at our place half the time, and my father they used to make the current for the Tremont Hotel there, that electric current for the lights and all there in his power plant back on the alley there. And my dad was in there working on that engine he had about half a time too.
Do you remember a first airplane around here?
Yeah, my brother had it.
Yeah,
my brother had it. George, he had his plane out there, and he taught several people's kids out there to drive his airplane. And when we were in business there, George wanted to buy an airplane and go into airplane business, and I wanted to go into the greenhouse business. And Dad said that'll be fine, so we made a contract, and we each took so much money, and George started his airplane business, and I started my greenhouse. I run a greenhouse for 25 years, and I love mine, and George cost us a lot of money. Boy, he was breaking them up about as fast as we could put them together, but he enjoyed it, and he had a good time.
Did you ever go fly with him?
I never flew with him at all. I never flew but twice in my life, and the last time I flew with a Standard Oil plane one time. They come over here, I don't know, it was advertising for something, and they flew us to Marion and back, and they didn't do any funny stuff at all. But I don't know, I got seasick or something. I was sick for 3 days, and I'd sit at the office and go to bed, and everything went around and around, and I swore off, and I've never been in one since.
I'll be darned. Where was your greenhouse?
Up on, right north of the Westward School building.
It's gone now?
Oh yes, it's gone. I sold out. After I found out that my first wife had cancer and would only be with us the doctor, LaSalle, told me within a month when she would leave me. And as soon as he told me when she would go, we closed up the greenhouse, set it up, sold it to Mrs. Messer at that time, over on the south side. And we started to enjoy the things that we had always thought we would do, but bless her heart, we didn't have time to finish it up.
Did you sell your flowers and everything?
Oh yes, and we belonged to FTD. I would work down the shop all day and then go home and work pretty all night if we had a good funeral. And when we started just as a hobby. We were going to just raise flowers for ourselves, and gosh, I wasn't in business 6 months till I had a third of the business of Wabash. Not that I wanted it, but I was in everything. They needed flowers, they just come, that's all. But boy, the difference in the cost in those days and now.
You look back now, Frank, do you hold any grudges over the years?
Oh no, this has been the best world that I've ever had. I've got no grudges. I love people. That's the only thing in retiring that I miss. I miss people. Because when you're behind the desk there for 55 years and wait on customers coming in all the time, after we sold out for 2 years, I would get my car and go out and call on my trade just like I used to, and didn't have a doggone thing to sell. But I just had to see somebody. And people were wonderful, because after you've called on them for 25 years, they know about what, and you've got brains enough after you've been on the road that long, that about 5 minutes is enough time to spend for a purchasing agent. And when you go, instead of having to wait on the end of the line to get in with your card, they say, well, just send them in, because they like a little break too. And I had a dozen fellows that I could go call on whenever I wanted to, and it was wonderful. I still miss people. I love people.
I'll bet you do.
I love people.
Do you have anything else you think we ought to put in here that's...
I don't know of anything else. I think I've covered most of the things here. There's a lot of detailed stuff that we could get into later if we'd ever want to add on something. But I think we've about covered my life as a whole. I love Wabash. I bought lots up here at Silver Lake about 10 years ago and thought I was going to sell out and go up there and rebuild up there, but I give that up. Wabash is my home and my friends are here, and when you get old, friendship is worth a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got some marvelous friends that I just love that. So
Good.
in the last 2 months, I owned a little farm over here in Miami County. I sold that here, and last week I got my check for my lake property. I sold that up there. So now I've got 3 lots in Silver Lake to sell yet, and then got my house in pretty good order.
Yeah, great.
The good Lord can push my button, and I'll be in pretty fair shape then.
Well, see, do you realize that you and I have been talking for an hour and 45 minutes?
I had no idea how
Yeah,
long it was.
we've been
When
talking.
you get to talking like this, you know, boy, your
Yeah.
time flies.
It does, and
Time flies.
Frank, I appreciate it, and I'll check, see when we get this typed, we'll get you a copy to
That'd be
correct and put in anything else that you want to put in there.
Okay, that'll be
And
fine.
then, of course, this tape will always be available for the grandchildren or
Well,
great-grandchildren.
what I'd like to do, when you get this in typewritten form, if it ain't too big and cost too much, I'd like to have a couple copies up.
Sure.
I think you can make me a couple copies up
Sure.
here,
Yeah,
10, 15 cents a sheet,
no
whatever it is.
problem at all. We'll get the
Well,
copy.
that don't make any difference. I'm willing to pay whatever it is,
No.
because I'd like to send one to my daughter in Indianapolis, and one
Sure.
to. Of course, you don't have time here to read this. Here, you see, in our genealogy, we go all the way through the family with all the pictures and everything. This is my mother, and here's the family you see here. And then I've got my daughters, both of them, have written a story of their life, and it's in here. Here it is, right here. Here's Billy, my daughter that's up in Oregon, right here.
She lives in Oregon?
Oregon. This
Yeah.
is history of her life here as she goes through. She's written it all up here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's real nice. And you put all this family genealogy and history and everything together.
Oh, yes.
You did that yourself.
Did that. I and my sister, we worked over 3 years, and I've written at least 200 or 300 letters abroad in Germany and all. And Germany, they told us that during the war, they had blown up all the records and everything they had over there, and we had a lot more records than they had of the Rettig history. But the Albers now, we go back to 1843. And we can give you the sheets in all the records and everything on the Alber side of it, not on the Rettig, but the Alber. That was my grandmother, Rettig, because she was an Alber.
Mm-hmm.
And they have all of go back there.
I think that's great.
It's a hobby.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to work on those things. You enjoy it, every minute of it.
Well, it's been it's almost a spring day. This January day is almost spring.
160.